So in this segment, we're going to be discussing why I back the junior doctors, or as they're called, resident doctors now, to strike. And I think Labour kind of brought this one on themselves a little bit. So we're going to have a listen to what Wes Streeting has to say, and we've got quite a few other clips lined up for you.
Shivam has called from Fulham. Hello, Shivam.
Hello there. Hi, so Mr. Streeting, I have a question for you. You previously said that full pay restoration is a journey, but your current offer is only 0.9% above inflation. And that means that full pay restoration at this pace would take over 20 years. Do you think that's acceptable? If not, what's an acceptable time frame for you?
So I tried to find the quote about full pay restoration. I couldn't see Wes Streeting say it directly, but I note that he doesn't oppose it in this clip. So I'm assuming it's a risky bet, but I'm assuming he did say, he did mention full pay restoration.
So Shiva,
as in he backs it.
In terms of the figure you just mentioned, the pay award that resident doctors have had for this year averages out at 5.4%. And that is the highest award in the entire public sector. Taken together with the deal we did with the BMA last year, that's a 28.9% pay increase.
Mr. Streeting,
now,
what is an acceptable time frame?
Let him answer your question. I will get back to you, Shivam.
And surprisingly, Wes Streeting does not answer the question, and Sheila doesn't make him. But, that is a good question. How long is it going to take?
Accept the argument that you and your colleagues in the BMA are making, that your pay has been eroded over more than a decade by the Conservatives. I mean, not literally your pay, because you wouldn't have been in the NHS all of that time, but the pay for your part of the profession has been eroded. And the same is also true for nurses, for consultants, for other NHS and social care staff, for the entire public sector. And that's why I'm proud that when we came in, not only did we do the deal with resident doctors, but the entire public sector has had real terms pay rises. All I ask you to consider is two things. One is that the public finances are under real pressure. So we're doing as much as we can, as fast as we can. And secondly, it's not just the pay that we have to contend with, it's also the conditions. You don't need me to tell you, because you're working in it, the sort of conditions that NHS staff are subjected to in terms of the bricks and mortar, the fabric, the building, the kit and the equipment. And that's not just true for our National Health Service. We'd be having the same conversation about...
No, he's waffling, because he was asked about how long should the pay restoration take, and this guy's talking about public finances, and he's talking about the infrastructure, which is obviously important. But this specific question is on pay.
Our schools,
okay,
about our prisons, about the entire public sector. So no, Shivam, I have not been able to overturn more than a decade of pay erosion in 1 year. But 28.9% is not only a good...
So for a few years, I think that is.
...start. It is not the condition on which you and your colleagues should be walking out on strike. And I'll say something else to you. And my question back to you is, when you're out on strike at the end of this month, standing out on the picket line protesting a 28.9% pay increase, what's your message to the patients whose operations and appointments and procedures will be delayed and cancelled? And also, what's your message to other NHS staff who will be inside picking up the pieces, having received a lower pay award than you, and in many cases working on lower pay? I don't think that's fair.
So if you didn't think it was fair, you should have offered them more money. It's up to those unions. Those unions decided to accept the amount of pay that they were offered. I did see No Justice cover this, and her coverage was quite good on this. That union accepting, or those workers accepting those lower pay settlements have impacted how much junior doctors can ask for. And trying to browbeat this guy by saying well, this is on you. It's like, you can stop these strikes. I'm not saying every government should crumble to every strike done, but the problem with the medical profession is these people can leave. The thing people don't realize is doctors have options, especially the ones trained in the UK, because the UK has very high standards for medical graduates. That's why so many foreign medical students come here, because it's a ticket to go, I think, practice medicine in the vast majority of countries in the world.
I don't think these strikes are necessary, and I don't think the BMA's actions are reasonable.
And just before I hear from you, Shivam, and I will come back to you, worth saying that almost 350,000 nursing staff in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will be asked to vote from Monday on a 3.6% pay rise. Shivam, your response...
We'll have to wait and see on that one, because I don't think that's gone yet.
I know that Mr. Streeting did actually answer my question, but this huge percentage increase.
I think he did.
He didn't answer the question. The question was about when does he think a timescale for pay restoration can be given, and he didn't answer that.
He did.
This huge percentage increase that Mr. Streeting's talking about is just an extra £4 an hour. 3 years ago, doctors were paid £14 an hour, and now we're paid around £18 an hour. And
This would have been around the time we had huge amounts of inflation as well.
what we're asking for is a reverse of the pay cuts. As Mr. Streeting said, a journey to pay restoration, and for a doctor to be paid £22.67 an hour to deliver life-saving treatment, to restart people's hearts, to look after hundreds of patients overnight. £22.67 an hour. In fact, if Mr. Streeting agrees today to pay doctors, currently doctors are getting paid less than their assistants. If he agrees to pay doctors £22.67 an hour a day, and £22.67 an hour, you can call off the strikes. And I'll tell you what, you don't even have to do it all in one go. What do you say? £22.67 an hour, Mr. Streeting.
Over what period, Shivam?
That's the question.
Well, that's up to Mr. Streeting. What does he? That's the whole point of my initial question. But obviously, 20 years is not acceptable. I mean, that's obviously Mr.
Can I
Streeting
ask
might
you
not even be in power in 4 years.
Before Wes Streeting answers that, can I ask you something, and perhaps he'd like to reflect on it too once he's answered your question? What about your pensions? Pensions are very generous. Under the NHS scheme, staff contribute between 5 and 12% of their salaries. The state contributes, comparatively to other places, and certainly the private sector, 23.7% to your pension every year.
Yes, and our pensions have also been degraded because the pensions are based on
Still
our
better
pay.
than most.
And
Still
our
better.
pay-
The thing is that they're working in the public sector. One of the deals I think in the public sector is that you're genuinely paid a better pension. You're paid on the back end rather than the front end. That's generally how it goes, even for civil servants as well. A lot of them could make more money in the private sector, but they get a very generous pension settlement, and that's one of the reasons why so many of them stay in for as long as they do.
has
Most,
been
Shivam.
significantly eroded. And you try and tell a doctor that your pension, which you're going to get in about 50 years, doctors are struggling now.
Well, it's growing. It's growing now. That's the point. Way
So-
more than other people's.
Look, let's just start on the points of agreement. So look, I understand that last point, Shivam, which is talking about pensions when you retire doesn't pay the bills today. I totally understand that. I also accept the arguments that you and your colleagues have been making about pay erosion, and also the conditions you've been working in terms of things like your rotations, your placements, and the bottlenecks in career progression that mean it is now harder to progress on to the promise of becoming the consultants of the future, where if we can get you into promotion and onto consultant level, you're paid at that stage as a starting salary over £100,000 a year.
With this stuff he's talking about with these consultants and stuff, right? But the thing is, like, there's no guarantee of that. Resident doctors have been going through a really awful time. So this article from a couple of months ago, an estimated 20,000 of them expect to miss out on NHS specialty training placements this month due to a sharp increase in competition for the posts. The BMA is urging the government to expand specialty training post numbers, which have stagnated while applications have increased. So what you're seeing is, like, they're not paid a lot in these roles, and this argument of, well, you're going to get these placements later and you're going to get paid way more money. There's no guarantee of it. There's a guy called into O'Brien show who's talking about there's no guarantee he will get one of the better roles. Trained in the better roles, and what that means is they're probably going to be unemployed. There's a reason why, you have doctors who are unemployed. One of the problems I have is I always conflate GPs with doctors, but I know they're not the same thing. But in 2024, 4.7 applications were made for every speciality post, with the number set to rise again next year. So you went from a position of less than 2 to 1 per post to almost 5 to 1 per post. It's crazy, and that's one of the problems they're facing. So they're not being paid a lot now. This idea that they'll get paid a lot later only hinges on them getting these placements. It's not necessarily a skill issue of you not getting these placements. It could be someone has better rank for the application, or it could be a whole number of things.
So on that, I think we're all agreed. Now, in terms of where pay sits today, and this was before the 5.4% pay rise came in, a first-year resident doctor out of medical school would be paid £43,275
So again, that's based on if you get one of these placements, I think.
on average. That's more than the average worker in this country. For the second year out of medical school, it goes up just 1 year later to £52,300. In the core training years, it averages out at £67,000 a year. and specialty registrars are paid almost 75,000, and that doesn't take into account the employer pension contributions. Now,
Well, let's talk about you, buddy. You make more than that money, and you get huge amounts of pension contributions, and when you're voted out as an MP or when you leave, you get even more money that's gifted to you.
you are all highly skilled, qualified people, and we desperately need you in the NHS. So I don't discount all of those things for a moment. My reluctance to sit here and say, well, here's how we map out the journey to the pay restoration you're campaigning for, is I don't make promises I can't keep.
Promises I can't keep. Good song by Mike Shinoda, but like if you did, and I want to be generous here because I couldn't find the quote, and that's on me. But I couldn't find the quote of him saying they're going to go for pay restoration. It could have been the BMA were under that assumption, or that's the goal of the BMA. But that's the goal of the BMA. And if you say to them, look, we can't go for full pay restoration in this time period, then they're going to have to accept it. But ultimately, if Wes Streeting did say those words, it's kind of on the Labour Party at that point.
And you will see the state of the public finances as they are today. And it would be, I think, really unfair for me to sit here and say, well, by the end of this parliament, we can get to X or Y, because I can't guarantee that the public finances would support it. And the second thing I would say is, in terms of the pay that's been awarded this year, it is the highest percentage pay increase across the public sector. We cannot afford to open that pay award. We just can't.
You could have raised taxes on the highest earners. Be that the people on the 45% tax rate, for example. That's something you could have done. There are many levers that you have at your disposal you're choosing not to use. Do you want to...
And even if we could, it would be unfair on the people who had a lower percentage pay increase and who had paid less, who are at the forefront of my mind because they are...
Because you paid them less, that's why. You offered them a worse deal, and they felt like they were in a position where they had to keep it, had to accept it. But the thing is, with these junior doctors, they have way more mobility. They can leave.
To pay their bills even more. So those are the constraints I'm operating under. That doesn't mean that in terms of the health secretary you've got to work with, I mean, quite genuinely, you've got a health secretary that is sympathetic to the arguments you're making, has worked with your predecessors to increase pay significantly by 28.9% in the first year that I've been in, and who wants to work with you to address all those other issues, the rotations, the placements, the bottlenecks, all of those other things. Honestly, do you think that the alternative that stares me across the face in the House of Commons will be better? You've got the ghost of Christmas past and the Conservative Party that left you out in the cold and left you out on strike. And you've got the ghost of Christmas future in the form of Nigel Farage and Reform, who don't even believe in the NHS. And
this is the big calculation they've got to make here. Because if the Conservatives come back in, and one of Labour's key promises was around waiting lists, this is on them to figure out, how much are they going to gamble here. And it's also up for the government, because the government can't just pin this all on junior doctors, because the public won't accept that. That's a failing on your part. You failed to get the NHS waiting list down. You can't go around blaming young G's for it. You have to take ownership for it. So it all depends on how it plays out, in the end. But then again, with this stuff, will Labour even win the next election? Who knows?
I don't agree that I should have given you the money last year. So work with the partner you've got in front of you and call off these strikes. We can make progress. Don't set it back.
Okay.
And the final thing I'd say is there are choices and trade-offs.
And that's for you as well. There are choices and trade-offs for you as well, pal.
If doctors are out on strike and we're cancelling operations and appointments and inflicting that misery on patients, we're also paying a heavy price financially. And we're going to have to find the money from somewhere. And that limits my opportunity
pensions?
to do
doctors' pensions?
Well, it limits my opportunities to deal with the other issues they're talking about in terms of doctor unemployment, in terms of their ability to progress to consultant posts.
Would you look at that hefty pension? That was generous pension. 23 if my employer was putting 23.
Oh, mate, I honestly hate this argument so much, right? I was trying to figure out how much Sheila makes, right? And I couldn't find an exact source on it, but I can see her producer is making, for a producer role with her, you're making about £30,000 to £35,000 a year, which is not far off what these junior doctors make. So, I imagine she must be on probably 100k, maybe 2. And so, I'm sure if these junior doctors could get paid that much, they'd be really happy about that.
Percent into my pension, I'd be dancing down the street.
Well, I mean, we've got this situation, Sheila, where the pension pot, by the time people become consultants, is so big that consultants lobby us to change the tax rules because they're taxed so heavily on the pensions because they're that valuable that they're like, oh, I might as well not bother working. My pension's so valuable. That's where we get to then. Now, if the BMA want to come to me and say, do you know what? Given that challenge, we think we would rather have...
The thing is, cutting the pensions, that's like... That does economically, that's not a good idea either, because all those pensions, all that money that goes invested into pensions is invested back into the economy, through bonds or stocks and shares. So that has a negative impact in the economy. So it's not the strongest argument here.
Have a slightly less generous pension in order to have higher pay today.
You'll talk to
those are the sorts of issues you.
No, I don't know if they go back to dude who called in, but he didn't answer the question. She does a really poor job of hosting, so just the most ridiculous thing. Another ridiculous caller from this one.
I think it's risible holding people to ransom like this. It's some of the best education in the world, and if you've got
you got to pay for it, dog. You got to pay for the best education in the world. You think medical school is free?
UK doctor training certificate, it's a golden ticket to go anywhere you want.
I don't think it's unfair to say that you give us at least 6 years, or I don't know. I've just made that number up at random, but
look, I don't think the worst argument in the world. Maybe you can go back to the union and say, look, you work in the NHS for a certain amount of years, and your student debt gets written off, because student debt is one of the big problems they have, because it's based on RPI. I'm a person who has student loans, but because these people earn more than above the threshold, they get that money comes out as well. Maybe student loans is something to look at. Like if they stay in the UK for a number of years, in the NHS, their student loan gets written off after 5 years or whatever.
Having gone through training, I think you should give us a certain number of years back into the country.
Well, I mean, if you look at performance, 2008 we were number one. We're like 36 now.
Yeah, because we had a Labour government, you absolute moron.
So if it's on performance, I think they should be getting a wage cut.
They weren't even there for most of that time, though. This is so stupid. Like, even Nick Ferrari can't believe it. The guy who called in, just moronic. This is the co-chair of the BMA discussing this.
Themselves have the worst pay erosion in the entire public sector, and doctors are highly skilled people. We're really valuable. We're the people who are there when your loved one has a heart attack. We're the people who are... I'm a paediatric trainee, so I'm looking after children and babies. So I'm the one that's there when you've got a sick child. And we don't think it's unreasonable that asking a first-year doctor that's paid roughly £17.60 odd, to be paid around £23 an hour for what?
I don't think it's that reasonable, to be honest. I saw this clip in Jeremy Viner, and this is the goal of these people. So dumb, these right wingers.
We need to give these doctors. We need to give these doctors in England, and that investment is walking out of the door because this government is not taking.
Let him have the last word,
The government is not taking our pay erosion seriously. Like, if people have options to go elsewhere where they're treated better, paid better, and the weather's better, then why wouldn't they? We need to give these doctors a reason to stay in the NHS.
Are you telling me, right, if Fox News offered to hire this lady, right, said, look, we're going to pay you more money and you can go live in, I don't know, like California or something, she's not going. She's going straight away.
You care about people's health, but the weather's better in Australia.
Okay, thank you.
The weather's better.
They care about people. Yeah, they're going to care for people in Australia.
Normally, we have never allowed a guest on before to say, I'm not taking calls from the public on this show.
Yeah, it's
I've done it. We've done it today because I
think he was scared. I think he was scared what the public would say. And I think what I would say in that position is, look, people, junior doctors can leave and go to other countries and go practice medicine over there if we're not paid enough. Like, the pylon is crazy, but that's the whole point, is they have options, they can go. And, for anyone who wants to argue about that, it is the free market at the end of the day. That's the problem. They go to America, they go to the Gulf states, they go to Australia. There's so many options for these doctors to go. And here we got Ben the idiot Kentish making the same kind of points.
Consequences of these strikes? Patients dying?
Stop me if you heard this one before, guys.
No, I don't think patients are dying because, patients
we
are
know
dying
patients
because of strikes. Patients are dying because the healthcare system is not funded and worked and not used appropriately.
But more will die. More will die if their operations are cancelled for the third or fourth.
More will die when more of these junior doctors go because they feel like they're not respected properly in this country and they're not paid enough and they can't afford to live in cities. More will go because of that, buddy.
And more will die if the doctors do not ballot for a strike, because the whole problem is that the doctors are not looked after and valued, and doctors themselves have committed suicide because of the poor working conditions.
Okay, that one I can't verify, but...
And the poor, and you don't talk about that, do you?
Well, we talk about.
I've never heard you talk about Kentish. I think I follow you on Twitter. Do I follow you on Twitter? No, I don't follow you on Twitter, but I've never seen you discuss it, mate.
about the patients dying, but why do the patients die? It's not because of the doctors striking.
Well, it is. If you've got cancer and your operation to remove that tumour has been cancelled 3 times because of strike action.
Okay, how would it be removed 3 times because of strike action? So they're going on strike. This is the first strike they're having in a year, right? So they're going to go on strike this week. If they miss it another 2 times, it's not because of strike action. Unless there's more strikes in those specific weeks. The probability of that is incredibly low.
Right.
And then it becomes untreatable and terminal. There are many people in that position who...
These are 2 different things he's saying here.
...will lose their lives as a result of these. I'm not saying people aren't dying as well because of the state of the NHS. Of course they are.
You know, when you get staffing crisis because you can't, you don't have enough staff, what are you going to do then?
The doctors, are they not looked after? Do you not have to look after the doctors who are looking after the person who's got cancer?
I'm not saying they shouldn't be looked after. I'm just saying...
That's what you're saying. You're saying
I'm not. When you say no one will be harmed as a result of these strikes, you are wrong.
Well, the government are responsible. They're the ones that run the country, and they're the ones that should do
I think, you know, people will be harmed. I think the message is, like, that's up to the government to resolve that, because at the end of the day, people are leaving, and you're going to have cancelled appointments because of it. The waiting lists are going to hit a plateau because of the fact you don't have the staff to deal with the stuff.
So you don't worry at all about the impact of these walks out. These
surely you should be asking Wes Streeting about this, you know, and Rachel Reeves. These are the people to ask these questions to. Here's Dr. Amir Khan talking about this.
As a GP who sees patients every day, I can tell you that most people who are off work because of sickness are not choosing to be off work. They would do anything to not have chronic fatigue.
Okay, this is about a different thing. But point being is, like, you know, you getting rid of doctors is not going to help with that. Get people back in. This is a wrong clip. Is Wes Streeting again discussing this?
Other NHS staff, other people across the public sector are frustrated and feeling the pinch because for over a decade they had a Conservative government that year after year devalued and eroded their pay packets. And that's why I'm really proud that this Labour government came in and has delivered real terms increases for public sector workers across the NHS.
You also did do it, in fairness, in the year we had, I think, the lowest inflation out of the 3 or 4 years previously. So, yeah.
Across the public sector, and for resident doctors in particular, they got the best deal, 28.9%. I think lots of other people looking at that figure and then seeing the announcement of 5 days of strike action will think, well, that's entirely unreasonable, and it's unnecessary, and it's also unfair. Unfair on other NHS staff, many of whom are paid less and would have liked that kind of pay rise and will now be left picking up the pieces.
I mean, that's up to them and their unions. That's the fundamentals of it.
If resident doctors go on strikes. It's also unfair on patients whose care will be inconvenienced and disrupted, and we shouldn't underestimate the impact of that. And it's also really unfair on the taxpayer as well. There are lots of things we want to sort out in this country. We're only a year in. We are making progress. Don't put that progress at risk with unnecessary and unreasonable strike action.
Yeah, I don't think it's unreasonable. I think you can argue it. You know, like, saw today, after 3 years working as a doctor, extra shifts, long weeks, the 9% of my salary that goes to student loan repayments hasn't made a dent. A student loan is still 15k. So yeah, you know, they do cite this graph a lot about, you know, the average for resident doctors is down by minus 22%. So they've actually been hit the hardest out of all of the groups. So, you know, it's easier for these other kind of, you know, nurses and things. You see nurses there to accept, you know, smaller increases because the route back to pay parity for them is much easier. Consultants have taken a beating though. Jesus, consultants have taken an absolute hammering there as well. So it is tragic. And I did see the resident doctors, massive student loans are uplifted by government RPI plus 3% annually. Yeah, using RPI for pay negotiations is unreasonable? ? Many of workers' costs are increased using RPI or higher, yet we're told our wages can't. What's good for the goose? Good. Yeah, I agree with them. 100%. Like, I don't think it's the right policy to go with. These are all separate things. But ultimately, I think the problem is with junior doctors, they have mobility on their side. A lot of them can end up leaving, and that's the free market. At the end of the day, same goes for teachers as well. Teachers can leave the industry, but I think with junior doctors, they have a lot more mobility because Australia, you know, wants them, you know, courts them. And so yeah, I think, you know, I've seen Phil call the junior doctors boneheads, which I think is stupid. But it's easy for him to say, you know, in ivory tower, I guess. But point being is, like, I think Labour need to map out a plan for pay restoration for this group. For the arguments that why these people are mad for, they weren't even there back in 2008. Is like it's about value at the end of the day as well. Like why should doctors, resident doctors now be paid less than the ones that were there in relative, in real terms than the ones in 2008? It doesn't make sense. Like, I think there should be a route back for pay restoration for everyone else, especially when you look at private workers have gone back up compared to the past, compared to 2008. Junior docs have taken I think the worst beating there, consultants as well. So just like to make the argument about other areas doesn't make sense unless they've been hit as badly or worse. So I don't buy a lot of the arguments people are touting here. It's a bit stupid, to be honest. I think the whole student loan system, I think if you go into becoming a medical student, maybe you just get rid of student loans for them completely. Maybe you just say, look, you're going to a field the country genuinely needs, and it's probably one of the most important fields of study in society. You're not going to get charged a student loan or whatever. Maybe there is something they can do for British students here and just say, like, you got to be in the NHS for a certain amount of years and it's written off. There are better ways to do this than going through the avenues we're going now, looking at pensions, etc. Like, there are other things we can do. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.